Welcome everyone to the now fifth installation of the FTC workshops, this one on building and maintaining team websites. Once again, presented by the Nerds of the North. So today, Vicky is going to discuss websites' purpose, audience, and tone, how the website is structured, and how the menus flow. Some things about blogs and tags and categorizing different blog posts, and then how you deal with images with minors. So like always, if you have questions, I'll be monitoring the chat and can pass those off to Vicky. And then if you could keep your microphones muted unless you're looking to talk. It's a pretty small meeting, so I don't suspect that will be an issue. So with that, I'll pass it off to Vicky to introduce herself and get started.
All right, thanks, Lawton. So you both know me, but if I seem awkwardly formal during this meeting, it's because we're also recording it and making it available to team members and coaches afterwards. So while it is right now in real time, just a small group of us hanging out, I'd like to make sure to still cover content that can be useful to people who watch the recording later. So welcome, Wade and Emma. So to get started, I should share my screen because I think Lawton is handing the reins over to me now. There we go. So I guess I was looking to begin before we get started with a little bit of feedback. So if you guys could share with me what your teams, like basically if you have something specific you're looking for out of this workshop tonight. So I want to make sure then we can include that. So in your case, you can tell me what teams you're representing. I kind of have a little bit of a sense, but just in case. And then if you already have team websites or social media in place, what that is, and then what you're hoping to get out of the session tonight, so we can make sure to touch on that. So whoever, well, on the top of my screen, I see Wade first. So Wade, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. Mainly I'm representing my rookie FTC team who have a Google site website in process of being started that they did on their own. And I was hoping that they could get something a little more customized, or at least more accessible to the rest of the community. And so that's that. And then my other teams, I think, are kind of on, doing their own thing. I'm not sure what their setup is, but this would be for the rookies.
All right. Cool. And Emma? Oh, you're muted, Emma.
I was trying to figure it out there. Technologically challenged person. So I'm representing Alchemy. That's the only team we're activating this year. We only have 10 team members in Southeast this year. So we decided, instead of splitting into two very small teams, we just keep it at one. So it's Alchemy 1, 2, 3, 7, 4. And quite frankly, we've kind of, I have to admit, our website's been kind of limping along for like 2 years, and it's time to get her up to speed. So I don't know much about it, but we have a couple enthusiastic new team members on the team that are, so I'm hoping it'll go.
Excellent. Very cool. It's always exciting to have new team members on board with energy towards something that might have been limping along. So that's great. And I see that we have Ardian just joined us. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name properly. If you'd be comfortable with unmuting and introducing yourself, and you can see the prompts on the screen to kind of let us know what team you're affiliated with and what your main hope is to get out of this workshop tonight.
Hi, my name is Ardian, and I'm from 3825 Novalinks, but I'm also kind of mentoring a new robotics team, the Battalion Bots. I don't have their number memorized. I'm kind of just hoping to pretty much learn everything you're going to teach me, because I don't have any real background in website design at all.
Awesome. And you said that you're mentoring, did you say it was Italian bots?
Battalion Bots. It's a JRTC.
JROTC. Battalion makes much more sense. All right. JROTC. Okay. Great. Excellent. Well, then I will begin. It sounds like pretty much all the content I had outlined for today will line up with what your hopes and goals are for this training today. So I've kind of got two parts of information to go over. The first one is more about like getting started. So even if you have a site that exists, but just kind of existed out of necessity and never really took shape, it might be good to go back to the basics and start rebuilding or kind of reassessing the need for your website as you build from the ground up. And then the second portion gets a little bit more into logistics on how to actually do that, so the more technical side. So before we get started on any of the big picture, it's always good to start with the why. Like, why do you need a team website? And it's not a simple answer. There's a number of reasons why. So you start with the why does your team need a website? And I would actually, for those of you team member or coaches, I would actually sit down your team, whether it's on Zoom or in a normal season, actually sit down everybody in your team, not just those devoted to building the site, and just brainstorm. And when brainstorming, no idea is a bad idea. No suggestion is the wrong answer. Brainstorm why you want that website. It's not a time to get into necessarily like all the bells and whistles you want to put on it. A lot of times we go straight to, oh, we should put this on there and that on there. But start with the why. The next thing to migrate to with that why is who's your audience then? So why do we want the website? Maybe one of the purposes is for recruitment of team members, or maybe it's for directing sponsors to your site, or maybe it's for PR purposes, for just general PR. Later on down the road, if you want to do some kind of fundraising, then you've got an archived history of the positive things your team's done. Maybe, and of course, I think this year, most people will be thinking in terms of judges, so that when you're at a virtual event, you have somewhere to direct judges as a link and repository of all things your team has done. So those are all very good whys. Then getting into who your audience is. So in that case, they're pretty easy to identify. You've got, if recruitment is one of your concerns, your audience is prospective team members. You're looking at PR and fundraising, you're looking now at donors, they're an audience. You're looking at, to assist with judging, now you've got judges as one of your audience. And then, and I'm sorry, I'm just gonna speed right through this part. My next suggestion would be to narrow it down to one primary audience. This is going to help your website team as you actually determine what content goes on your site and how you structure the navigation of your site. Keeping in mind that yes, it's being built for multiple audiences, but when it comes down to it, if you have a primary audience, it's just a much easier conversation to have. That way, when you're making decisions, you can say, ultimately, it fits the goals for this visitor to our site. Does it also work for these people? Yes, but this is our primary one. Then I get into the what. So again, I think we tend to get so excited about websites, and those who haven't gone through a process like this before go straight to the what. We go, oh, we should have a video of this, and we should have a 3D model of the robot, and we should have like member profiles. But always start at the beginning with why and who are you making it for, and then build this direction. So this is the workflow or the sequence I typically take with a group of students. So number one, I list all the things that you want to on the website. And again, treating this as a true brainstorming activity, I would say no idea is a bad idea. Just dump your ideas. And it's okay if people come up with ideas separately, individually, and then pile them together and there's similar ideas and overlap, no problem. Just get every good idea out there, or every idea. You can narrow down if it's a good idea later on. Then I would say go look at other teams' websites. Notice I did not put that first. One reason for that is because the world of first is so varied in why people use websites. I think you can bias your team and accidentally start down the path of completely copying another team's website if that's the very first stop you make. So if you start with your team's needs and your team's desire to communicate what it is your team wants to be communicating, then go to the inspiration. You sort of already started your team out with a lens of their identity in that website. If you go straight to another team's website and you start modeling after that, think you'll find that you're kind of, you're trying on someone else's clothes, you know? So I would still recommend going to other teams' websites because you're going to find content there that you maybe didn't think of. I will use the FRC website as an example. When we were going into judging for chairmans this last summer, there was a little bit of comparison that happened to other teams' websites ahead of time quickly, make sure, you know, does our site look okay? And it was so interesting to see the different angle each team takes on their websites. Some feel like they exist simply to post what awards they've received in the past. So others is almost more like a virtual award showcase. Others are more like static information. You can't tell how long since they've updated it. Others are essentially a blog. The website will take on the personality of your team. So yeah, and that's okay, that's good. So then this third step would be to add ideas from your team's list, or add those ideas you got inspired by other teams. And then fourth, at that point, I would start looking for redundancies and start combining like similar opportunities, like the redundant ideas among people, or see like, hey, these two are very similar and maybe not a lot of content, so we could put that in one page, right? So again, this is more about like getting started, but if you are not quite, like if you never really officially tackled a website project, you might want to go back to square one with your team at the beginning. So during step 4, that's a good step to start also asking, does this belong on the website? Which always, again, brings it back to who's our audience, who's our primary audience. So it's okay to, at this point, start saying, good idea, bad idea, or maybe not the appropriate venue sort of idea. Yeah. I'd like to also point out at this point, the distinction between pages and blog posts. So depending on the website platform you go with, you might have options to use blog posts as opposed to a static page. So when you create pages, those are meant to be more like you update them, there's information there, but you're not going every day and updating a piece of chronologically relevant information, as opposed to a blog post, which is more like a news update. So a lot of times you might be brainstorming and your team might say, oh, it'd be cool if we could include updates on our outreach. Awesome. You don't have to feel like you need to itemize each of those updates during your brainstorm session, because you could just say, we're going to include outreach blog posts. And that can be its item. And then your team gets into a habit of updating those regularly. Did that make sense? Blog versus pages? Yeah. Okay. I've been going really fast, so let me stop and pause. Any questions, comments, thoughts, feedback right now?
Would you recommend like having a section for blog posts, like just specifically for the outreach, but mainly focusing on a pages format?
Absolutely. I do recommend blog posts, but I would also say assess your team's time and availability for that. So if you create a structure for blog posts, but you know that you guys are stretched too thin and you're not going to be able to maintain it, it might actually be less helpful to your overall website, because you might only have a blog post from 6 months ago and it's not going to be very useful to your visitors. So I would say it's okay to be completely realistic with your goals, or even take it on one step at a time. Create your pages and then decide if you're ready to try to maintain a blog as well. Does that answer your question, Ardian?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Then getting into the structure, this is what I would suggest. Again, it's just a workflow I found works when you're trying to collaborate with a group to start a website. Creating the underlying storage structure of your site actually can and should be pretty reflective of how your organization works. So at that point, at this point, imagine you have like a pile of sticky notes with all your ideas, and you've combined some of them. You've said, oh, okay, this one and that one's similar. And you had all these ideas of content you want to go on your site. Now's your chance to take those sticky notes and start grouping them together. And there's not a right or wrong way to do this. So you might find that your team likes to organize content by group of who your site visitors are. Some websites are like that. So we'll say for community, for team members, prospective team members and group them that way. You might group them by themes. Maybe you say robot outreach. I don't know, robot outreach, business. I'm going into FRC land now. Maybe you put things in themes of years. You know, it's what your team decides is the best categorized, organized fit for the content you've decided you want on your website. Think about pages and the structure of how you're going to structure these pages as an outline you would do for a writing class. So if you've learned about like how to write an outline for a research paper, you've got your main point 1 or your Roman numeral 1, and then you've got your letters A, and then you've got your lowercase Roman numerals, right? If you've got your main point of letter A, but only 1 Roman numeral under that, that's not a true subpoint, right? So you want to just kind of work it out like an outline and question if you've only got 1 little page under it, maybe that just is the page. That's just kind of a little too far into that depth. Okay, so you can think about those almost as outlines as you're layering them. And then you'd use that structure to actually create the menu, which will be slightly different technology depending on what website platform you're using. So yeah, I would say once you've kind of got them grouped like that, the grouping you've come up with serves as a really great main menu navigation for your top menu bar. And it's okay to use redundant links. So for instance, if your team was talking about like say maybe member bios and somebody wanted to put it as a menu item underneath a category and someone else also wants to make it as a button off to the side, it's okay to have links pointing to the same page. And actually that helps because your team is a really good sample of the different psychologies of different visitors to your website. So people are going to look for things in different places. So if you have links in multiple places leading to one page, that's fine, but I'd suggest you just make sure you name it the same. Otherwise it gets really confusing. Okay, so that was just a lot of talking. Oh, good. Thanks for the thumbs up. So that worked. All right. So the next step, if we could get into some actual logistics and in like the technical aspect of building, unless there's other questions about kind of the groundwork you do before you jump into websites. Okay. All right, so these are the topics. I'm going to actually stop sharing the presentation. And I'm going to go to screen share of some website examples. So these are the topics that I wanted to show you guys during like how to actually do the building part. So we're going to go over some web design builders or website builders, some design tips, blog post tips. So I'll get more into some blog post ideas for your audience, and legal things to consider with images and names, considering using pages for judges, and SEO, which is search engine optimization. All right. Okay. So the first one, the website builders, WordPress, Wix, Squarespace, Weebly. I didn't even put Google on there, Google Sites. I'll be honest, Google Sites, I've just personally never grown very fond of. I've never been able to do with it what I've wanted to. So I haven't spent a lot of time on that platform. I will tell you, WordPress is an open source content management system. It does allow for a lot more customization. You can really, I mean, very professional websites are hosted on WordPress. So it does have opportunity to edit code even if you wanted to. Wix, Squarespace, and Weebly are options for a drag and drop block-based visual interface. So it's, with that though, it's also, you're more limited on what you're able to do with the site. So you're really confined by the theme. You can update content, but you don't get to like do the page layout, which is a good or a bad thing. Depends on what your team wants out of a site. They also tend to come, they all cost for the most part, or either for the hosting of your domain. They usually have a free version, but then it has their like weebly.yourteamname.com. Regarding WordPress as an option, that's all the examples I'll be showing you tonight are on WordPress. And one reason I'd like to push for considering WordPress is that we do have a domain, akfirstrobotics.org. Well, when I say we, I mean Roche has a domain, akfirstrobotics.org, and registered with the idea that that can become a repository / landing page for all of the FIRST robotics teams in Alaska. So we actually have an unlimited number, if I understand correctly, an unlimited number of subdomains that we can register. So you can notice that the FRC team is frc568.akfirstrobotics.org. And that is something he's already subscribed to and pays the bill on. So, and again, just jump in if this is not correct information, but we can offer signing you up for your own WordPress installation on that domain. So, and you can decide what you want it called. West High Robotics did express interest in having a subdomain, but because they're not sure whether they'll have two teams some seasons, 3 other seasons, rather than making their domain the team name, they just named it West High Robotics or something like that. So that is an option for you. Next item was, I'm going to stop sharing really quick so I can pull up my notes. Any questions right now about the different platforms?
No, you did a very good job of explaining them. It sounds like WordPress is more customizable. The other ones are easier and probably are like, I won't need as much experience with them.
That is true. Yep, absolutely true. The other thing about WordPress is that, well, actually all of them, there's a lot of like help out there. So if you can just Google search things and get lots of results, I would caution against if you had a team member who's like, oh, I've got more professional expertise, or I dabble in this on the side. I would be hesitant to do anything with anything more advanced than WordPress, because how's your team going to maintain it when that person graduates? So WordPress, I would say personally, from my experience, would be the stretch of kind of the maximum I'd push it with a high school maintained website.
Yeah, I use WordPress for actually announcements onto the IDEA website. All the field reps do. So I've got that angle of it, not necessarily maintaining a website.
Mm. Great. Yeah, so you're already a WordPress pro. All right. Okay, so the next one up was design tips. So featured images on pages and posts. So I'm going to just go into the background of WordPress so you can sort of see. So you have posts, which is, again, your blog posts, and then you have pages. We talked earlier about creating the structure of your site so that you could have, say, like child pages, almost like a structure. An example would be if you look at the Nerds of the North, the way that team decided to structure it was, for instance, under seasons. If you hover over a season, there's a sub page for each one of those, or as WordPress calls it, this is the parent page and the child pages. And yes, there can be grandchildren. So if you click on the pages tab, then you can see each of these dashed ones underneath that season actually are in there as a child page of that season. And I will say that, you know, at first when you're getting started, it may not seem like the most important detail, because you might only start out with 5 pages, but you get down the road and there's a lot of pages to deal with. So if you can organize and think ahead of time about how you want your website structured, now all the content is just falling easily into the structure you've created. Within those pages, let's do a page layout look. Well, okay, let's go look at, no, we'll stay on pages. Okay. Excuse me while I debate with myself. So within the pages themselves, I should have looked for a good example first. Let's do, oh, that brings us to the homepage. All right. Let's do a season. All right. Okay, so this page uses an image. You've got your buttons off to the side. It's more of like what I'd consider a landing page because it's linking out to further pages from there. And if we look at, let's say the team. Sorry, I'm managing all the Zoom windows as well. All right, so in this case, this doesn't have any language on the page itself. So it's not like an about page that might have a lot of text on it. I will say that if you have a page with a lot of written text information in any graphic design layout, try to break that information up. You can use headers or bold text to categorize, our mission, what we do. If you have anything with a large amount of text, break that apart with bold headers or any kind of header 1, header 2. And then also bullet points will really help. If you land on a page with a ton of text, nobody wants to read it. But in this case, here you have an image, and this would also be set as the page's feature image. The reason that's important is if you ever link to it on social media, well, I mean, there's other reasons it's important, but in this case, if you ever link to it, so say you're trying to send a link saying, learn more about our team, that feature image is what social media will automatically pull from your link to show. I don't know if you've ever seen Facebook shares of a website, and it just has like a gray with a watermark, and it's really unflattering. You get like way more clicks and way more, your analytics will skyrocket if there was an actual image there. So another thing to consider on your blog posts is always doing feature images. All right, enough of the images. Check. Breaking your text in chunks, info pages using headers and bullets, absolutely, okay. So you can actually, as you can see up here, add a new page. You can also hover over the new and choose if you want to add a new post or a new page. The page editors for WordPress, depending on which version of WordPress you download, can be, well, I'd say about 3 different versions of page editors. You can see right now this looks like all jumbled, and that's because they used like a plugin. Yeah, that's another bad example, sorry. This one, it's called Visual Composer. It's a plugin that allows drag and drop. So Ardian, you know how you said one would be easier because it's drag and drop, like a block base? If you use Visual Composer, it's a plugin that you can install for your WordPress, and it turns your page design into a block-based drag and drop. So that's one thing I would suggest. So right here, we can edit. You can see I can add to the row, I can add the plus sign, and I can add whatever, like I can add a single image, I can add a text block. So that is something I'd recommend if you're concerned, like you want the bells and whistles of a WordPress site, you want the free domain that's offered, but you want more of a user-friendly drag and drop, this could be the way to go for you guys. If you want any help from me getting your hands on a copy of that that plugin, I can help direct you there. So plugins are just like add-ons for your website, for the background, for the building side of it, the dashboard. Okay, so then if you go to posts, this is where you would add your new blog posts. So you can see your authors there. You can see when they've been posted, but you can also see in this column here categories. And the way these categories work, I can actually see some that are not categorized correctly. That one's not a real blog post. So the power of blog posts, one really cool thing about them is that if you got into detail of wanting to post about multiple topics, you can use categories to split those off and even include them in the menus. So in this case, anytime that somebody categorizes a blog post, for instance, inside the Riley Robot game, got categorized as literacy and outreach and Riley Robot. which means now your guests could click on that category and see all posts related to that. You could also include it in your menuing. So if we go back to the main site, you'll see that underneath outreach projects, our team has, let's see if it actually works. Let's do STEM education. Yeah, when you go to STEM education, see how it's automatically showing all the categories related to STEM education. In this case, it really helps, I think for remote judging, this one's really powerful. So for instance, if you're telling judges that, oh, we do outreach in these 3 areas, and then you actually have the ability for them to navigate through all of your updates in that outreach, I think that's a really important use for that tool. So categories can be set up directly on the blog posts or again in the background. So if we go to underneath posts, hover there, you've got your categories there. They work the same way in Pages that you can have subcategories, child categories. So here you've got outreach, and then as subcategories of that, they have their 3 areas of outreach. There's also a pandemic category. I didn't know about that. Cool. And a Riley robot category, and then robot team bombing. You can also use tags. Tags can help with like search engines. They can actually click on tags and also view, but otherwise we haven't really used tags a ton. Questions so far? How are we doing?
Good. The only question I have is, did you say you can't click on tags, or you can click on them?
You can. There's also, like, I use tags more like keywords. So like if you think about what a person might search to find your website, or search to find that article. If you view your blog post as an article, think about those as the keywords to summarize what it's about, not in written form with commas in between. I've seen sites where they make like tag clouds, so that way it like makes a larger word if it shows up more often as a tag. Honestly, for most team websites, it's probably unnecessary for the uses of most of the team websites. Cool. Other questions?
I had one I put in chat just about already it's kind of complicated. Is there like a cheat sheet or a checklist that we could use to like say, okay, I've done that, I've done that, I've done that, I've done that?
Complicated? Sorry. Did I go straight from like straight
No,
to the...
it's not complicated in the sense of like any one thing, but there is a lot of information that's coming out, and I know trying to herd a bunch of cats to do this would be tough.
So I think like in the beginning, right before we got to the build part and the logistics, that part was fairly structured, right? Like this is how you begin. And then to me, honestly, at that point, once you've got your pages figured out and this and that, that's where I would actually funnel it down to a devoted select few who are building. And I would have them follow exactly off your plan. So that's why we never jump straight into the website. We plan it first, right? You've got your plan. You're laughing. Sure we do. Okay. So you've got your plan. Do you plan your robot first? Come on. Like, you've got your plan and you know which pages and content. You know that you want these main items. You know you want these sub pages with this type of content on it. So when you now have your paper or your Word doc and you come over here to your dashboard, your couple of students who are devoted to this are literally going, okay, we decided we want a page here. So I'm going to go click add new page. We decided we wanted blog posts in 3 areas. We wanted it in robot and outreach and pandemic. Oh, so we need to go make categories for those 3 things. So that, I think the complication is pulled out of it when you actually have a plan and people are going down the checklist then, because they're saying this is what we decided to make and now we're making it and making it and making it. That's what's different, I guess, about this workshop is that I'm trying to show you hypothetically now the tools that you'll need as you're sequentially going through your list. And so that's why we're also kind of losing the structure of how you guys would as a team then go through that. Does that help at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll have to do in order to learn type thing, or at
Yeah.
least see it done, the process of it done uh, at some point.
Oh, I didn't see that Alec is here too. Hi, Alec.
And prior to when we were using a different system before we came to WordPress, I can't even remember what it was now, it was so long ago. But so there was just because we had experienced something else prior to using it, we had a fair learning curve, all us field reps did when we walked into it. But there are actually some pretty spectacular training videos out there on how to use WordPress.
Yes, absolutely. And that's because it's open source, you also have a ton of people out there developing various plugins. So for instance, the FRC team bios, that's a plugin. So if you go, but I'm also not sure if you're not wanting more depth right now, but I will show it to you guys. You can just ignore it if you're not ready for it. But once you have your own installation of WordPress, you would hover over plugins and you can look at, there's some that come automatically installed, and then you would go to add new. And when you go, you can search for like a team plugin, you can search for, we did a WooCommerce plugin for the Lego robotics, or the Operation Lego redistribution site. You can search for, like, even if you want a carousel image slider, you can do that and search for that. So this is where you'll find plugins that have been developed by anyone out there. So word of caution, they've been developed by anyone out there. So that's a good thing and a bad thing. Some things to consider is the ratings and the number of people who have given ratings. If you see something that's only been given by 30 people, I'd avoid it, even if it is 5-star. Also look at the last update. So if it's been last updated less than more than a year ago, I wouldn't touch it. That is also a risk you take on when installing plugins, is the possibility that they stop getting updated. But that kind of comes with the website territory. You'll also see the little red bubble 7. That's just general maintenance stuff. You'll see every once in a while that it does prompt you to update your plugins. So you'll start, if you start dabbling in installing plugins on your WordPress, you will also need to make sure that you update them, which clearly we haven't done. So, let's see, I see a chat. Hi, Allison. Is there a checklist of steps? That's what that was. Sorry, that was your chat. All right, so we start with pages and posts. That's really what most of your web authors are going to need. They're going to develop the pages. They're going to develop pages, what you start with. Then your posts, once you've got your categories established, are what you might ask your whole team to weigh in on. It kind of depends on the dynamics of your team. You might have one person doing the post, but that I could see being an easy one to say, okay, we want our whole team to know how to make posts. And when they do, all they have to do is say add new post, and they're going to write a paragraph summarizing what they did, and they're going to add a picture, and they don't have to know anything else about the website, right? Website training. That's the topic of my post. I'm going to write in my post. This is a blog post. Don't worry, Lawton, I will not post this on your website. And then over here is on the side, let's see. See, this is a new version of, there we go, on document, there we go. On the document tab, this is where you can set your featured image. And that, with most of the themes for WordPress, is what's actually going to, most of the WordPress themes have a featured image that shows along with a small snippet of your blog post. Again, it's way more interesting if you have a picture there, drawing people to click on it and check out what you've written. So that's what's displayed there. Depending on the theme your team has selected for their website, sometimes it automatically takes your feature image and puts it at the top of your blog post. Sometimes it does not, so you may want to consider adding images into the content of your post here as well. You can, this is a little bit cheating, but when you're first getting started, if you wanted to post date some things, to sort of set the routine of, look, we post stuff, even though it may not be true yet. You can actually edit when it gets published. So you would click here where it says publish, and you could post date. You can also schedule things to be published in the future. So if you did want to write up a blog post that's maybe announcing upcoming meetings or announcing something or other, you can schedule it well ahead of time and just let it self-publish when it comes to be that time. Any questions there? I will say that there's obviously a lot of settings here. Honestly, the best way is to just explore those. And like Emma said, there's so many resources out there for WordPress. So just Google searching will answer those questions, or you can always reach out to me. Okay. Yes, I want to leave this page. All right, so now kind of going into the users, if you do indeed sign up for a WordPress site, you will have to add the people that you want to be able to edit on your site. So that's the user tab right there. You can set it up so that it sends them an email and they set their own usernames and passwords. You will want to change them to editor, I believe it is, if you want them to be able to make pages. Administrator does like the menuing. Honestly, I think most of the students administrators. One can do blog posts only, one can do blog posts and pages. It's their site, so they're all admins. So, and that is probably about as far as I want to, because this is all very WordPress specific. And I think starting with the bigger, broader topics that we did that were more about like how to, what is the purpose of a website, who's your audience, and kind of like narrowing it down to what the content is and managing the layout of your site is probably the more important questions for teams to be addressing, because again, this is all Google searchable, right? I mean, I'm happy to answer technical questions, but knowing that not everybody here will necessarily go down the route of WordPress, I also don't want to get too much into the thick of it. Well, I did realize I did forget to show you guys menuing. Do you guys want to see menuing, the menus? Yeah. Okay. So if you go over to the Appearance tab, that is actually where I've actually abandoned half of this stuff. Okay, themes. So you can actually download, install various themes, which again will need updates. We have a lot of updates we need to run here. So you can actually search for different themes that people have created. I will warn you that most of these images, the thumbnails that show you what that theme looks like, nothing just happens automatically like that. You might install one of these themes and then you have to choose activate for it to actually take over what you want the visual layout of your site to look like. And it won't look anything like it because it still needs you to go in and actually edit all the content like that. So I think that's one of the misunderstandings is people just install a theme and they're like, it doesn't look like that now. Still takes some work. So you can install your new themes here, activate them. You can also customize your themes. So depending on the theme that you've activated, it has different settings that it allows you to edit, adjust. So maybe the theme lets you edit the font. Maybe the theme lets you edit the colors. Maybe the theme lets you edit the site layout with headers and stuff. That varies theme to theme. So again, that's going to be just to activate it and check it out and see what you get to play around with, what settings you get to change. In that same tab under Appearance, you have your menus right here. And so you can actually use menus like on the sidebar, you can use menus in the footer. That once again depends on the theme that you've installed, but reliably you will have a main menu across the top usually. Some menus or some designs might have like the 3 bars that you click on and it collapses like if it was on a mobile device. And this is where, once again, using the same structure that you started with the planning, you would go through that outline that I talked to you about. And this is where you now see that outline. So you see your main points 1, and then an indentation. And that is actually going to be the, when you hover over your buttons, the items that collapse underneath it or uncollapse, right? So if this is on your far left, you've got your home button, and then your next one in would be your about button. And when you hover over the about, they've created the Nerds of the North, org chart, Nerdlets, Virtual Robotics Lab, and First Robotics. That will then descend from that button when you hover. Then over here, goes back out to level 1, your season. At a level 2, you've got your 2002 Infinite Recharge. Level 3 are the things that are going to pop up from that. And you can view those, search those by, right now it's got most recent selected, but I can click on View All, which will show me all of the pages that we have existing. You can also click on Categories, which is where you would then add in, like we did, say that you want underneath About, you want a, to post all of your pandemic categories, so that if they clicked on pandemic, it would show all the blog posts from pandemic. You can put individual posts on there as well by searching here and adding those into your menu. So you just select it and then click Add to Menu. And then within your menu, you can drag them around. You can move them up to level 1 or move them into level 2. You do have to give your menu a name, in this case, main menu. You can have multiple menus. So you might decide creating a menu for your footer or a sidebar menu, and you might decide you want different things listed there. So you can create multiples, you click Save. In your themes, when you first set it up, you do need to have at least a main menu, or it will just automatically list all your pages. So that's how you set up your navigation. Questions there?
With the, I think you referred to it as a child page. Where do you add that? I don't see them underneath some of these pages categories.
Good call. All right, so if I go back up to pages, and you can see View All. The most recent is just listing the most recent ones we've actually worked on. You should be able to see, like 2019, the child pages are listed as an indentation from that. So it keeps them all grouped together as well.
Oh, okay, I didn't notice that before. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Good question. Other questions? I know that was super fast. Let me check the list really quick. So we've got blog posts. Talked about the magic of categories with blog posts. Legal things to know about. So I'm going to actually stop sharing for a bit here and go back to my notes. Right, so some legal things to know about. First of all, images being used. I think there's a misperception out there that if you Google image search, it's free for you to use. It is not. I actually have been contacted and told you must remove this image or else legal action will be taken. And so that is not, no, that is not your image. You can use, go to stock image websites and search for stock images that are like Creative Commons or like just like a license that if you say you're a nonprofit or education, it lets you do it for free, download it for $0. So stock image sites, you can use your own images, but do not, please do not just go and steal somebody else's image from online or anywhere. Point number 2 about that, minors. So, or images of anybody on your site for that matter. So I would encourage you to make sure that all team members have filled out the First Inspires media release. Go to the First Inspires dashboard, fill out the media release there. It is also really great motivation to get your whole team registered early in the season. And then also that your coaches and mentors are all on your roster. And so if you, please make sure your bases are covered that way. The media release forms from First do apply for the pictures being taken and used for promotion of First and First related activities and teams. So that covers you. I would suggest, like most K-12 organizations do not recommend, well, have their own policies about not using last names on websites. So I would recommend following that, even though you may not be held accountable to that based on if your team is a community team or homeschool team. I do think the FRC website is not following that rule right now, but I would recommend just using first names only. It is just the safer way to go. Oh, there have been questions in the past about outreach events. I know this year's a little different, but let's say that you are at a first event and you take pictures and there's little children who you will never know the names of to be able to track down media forms from them. Well, first events, they're covered there. Secondly, public events. So the rule of thumb is if it's a public event, images are, you can use images of people if it was a public space and a public event. So that is fine for you to use. That's kind of like a media journalism. Yeah, so if it's a public space, public event, you are free to use those images. And then search engine, well, that might be questions about images and media release and legal stuff. Oh, accessibility issues. Wow, wait, all right, cool. That's an advanced question for somebody who didn't want as many details. All right.
A simple version, like
Simple
the
simple
hints
version.
and tricks, yeah.
So accessibility is something that should be considered. It's the right thing to do. And so there, primarily for website design, you're thinking about the visually impaired visitors to your site. So in that case, you'll see that when you go to add images, no matter what platform you're using, it allows a field called alt text. That's where you provide a brief description of what's in the image. So if a person's using a screen reader, when it gets to that image, it reads that part aloud. And so that you don't want to write a novel because it will interrupt the flow of the page of the full novel, but it should be enough that if someone were to say, what's that picture? You say, it's 2 students building a robot. Okay. You do not have to describe the color of the hair or what's in the background or what color the robot is, just like it's 2 students building a robot. We just registered. Oh, okay. Let me, I'm gonna revisit that comment in just a second. The other part of accessibility, a big misstep that I see is that people see like a poster or something that they want to just easily put on their site and they take a screenshot of it and do that. When it's a screenshot of words, a screen reader cannot read that because it loses its text. It's now a picture of text. And so if avoidable, you should actually just put that text on your site so the screen reader can read the text. If there's an image that has words in it and it's just not avoidable, just make sure that goes in your alt text. So image that says, and include in quotes what the picture says. And then, I don't know, this might get too much into the weeds, but technically, okay, the headers. Remember earlier I told you use the headers on your page. You might see in Microsoft Word or Google Docs that you can have like paragraph text, but then you also could have like header 1, header 2, header 3, header 4, right? You guys have all seen this, yeah? No? Okay. Headers are actually meant to structure the content of what you're delivering. So that should also be like, this is our main point, header 1, outreach. Oh, now we're talking about something that lands underneath outreach, and that is our Riley robot book. We're gonna make this, we want a header on here, labeling it, but it's a subpoint of this, so it's header 2. Those headers are used in the screen reader's delivery of content. So when you go and say, ooh, but I like the way that header 3 looks, I'm going to use that instead, you screw up how the content is delivered, and is, I'm not sure the logistics of how, but it's not considered accessible as a website page. So use it as meant to be. Header 1 first, header 2, 2, 2, back up to header 1. Yeah.
Thank you.
Was that too much depth?
That actually probably was pretty good points to remember, those 3 things.
Okay, I won't go any further then. Allison, you said typically we've just registered and signed consent forms before tournaments. This year, every student needs to register and sign the consent online, technically before participating in any manner. Awesome, good. So that's even more reinforcement of don't wait. And so now you have many reasons to make sure they're registered in advance. This might be a bit advanced, but search engine optimization. So that is if a person Google searches, they find you easily and ranks you higher in the search results. I'll give you a little trick. The more links that you link to other people and the more they link to you, your SEO, let's consider it like a score, is just climbing. So it also can be really helpful in like, for instance, if you have a main sponsor you guys just signed on, link to their website. You're making reference to collaborating with another team and they have a team website, link to their site. So when you're writing about something and you say, and we collaborated with JBots on this project, so they presented last week, or we have a couple, Novalinks, so FRC, so we collaborated with Novalinks, highlight and hyperlink that text to the Novalinks, right? And that actually in the background will benefit your SEO. That's probably more than you wanted to know, but it's a fun little trick that, that will help make your site more discoverable. Other thoughts or questions? Have I like, the first part you guys were like, yeah, we can do this, we can plan, we can use sticky notes, and now you're like, no. All right. Well, I would say, like, I know we kind of got into the weeds of actually starting up and structuring a site, but I want to bring it back full circle to the why. So we started at the beginning of this workshop talking about why. We started talking about the value in having a website. We talked about the audience and developing your pages and content and even the navigation based on who your primary audience is, and always thinking about who your audience is. So I want to bring it full circle back to that because I know it can be overwhelming when you're looking at the technology. I don't think there's a right or wrong way for your team to go. Maybe you guys decide you want to go with Wix and drag and drop some blocks in and make it less of a hurdle to learn the techie side of it. Or maybe you decide to go with the WordPress option and spend a little bit of time tinkering with that and putting as a, maybe you want a subdomain on the AK First Robotics site, no problem. All of it is a good idea. I would just always bring it back to why and make sure that your team has an opportunity to all weigh in on the overall purpose and mission and vision of your site and make sure it's a true reflection of your team.
If my team does, sorry, if my team does decide to use the WordPress and actually become, I believe you said it was a subdomain under FTC Robotics, who do I reach out to kind of get that permission and authorization?
So I can get you set up on there, and then Roach, do you know how to do that as well? No? Okay, so you can reach out.
Not practiced in it, that's for sure.
Okay. You can reach out to me, and I might actually. So Ardian's one of yours, right? Okay, so I might make your coach watch and learn. Other questions? Oh, I see your question now. So the other thing is, if you decide not to go with a subdomain, we would still love to link to your site if you go with something else, or Weebly or Wix or Squarespace. So please go ahead and send me an email if you do develop a site using a different platform. Let me know your URL and we will link to it from our menus and still feature your team's site there. So keep us posted and we'll make sure to kind of add you to the repository of all team sites.
Is your email just a regular ASD formatted email or?
Actually, I work for UAA, so I will throw that in there really quick. There we go. It is in the chat now. So that's my email. You can reach out to me there. I realized I skipped over my introduction. Oops. So, hi, my name is Vicky. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, as you can see, I could keep talking about websites for another couple hours, but I think I'll spare you all. Feel free to reach out with any questions, or if you need help with anything, or again, if you want me to set you up with the WordPress site, I could also set you up with one that if you just want to tinker around and check out what options there are, like what it feels like to actually build pages there. Well, that's all I've got for you guys, unless you